Hey, what's up, everybody? Jay Pounds here. Got another rebuild article for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding each position during a rebuild. And I know I've touched on all the positions in previous articles, and I'm going to continue to do so in future articles. These are things that you need to hear multiple times before they're going to stick. They're things that everybody overlooks. Little things like that. I talked about them last week, but this is just going to go more in a general sense on the position and touch on like longevity, salary, when to draft them, where to draft them, things like that, trade for them, free agency, just random little tidbits about the position that will kind of help you understand it a little bit more as you go during your rebuild, and it'll really help you kind of form your own opinion on how to attack that position or each position, depending on what your team needs. Rebuilding is a tough task. It's not always fun, not always easy, but it is what you make it. If you make it fun, it'll be fun. There are going to be stressful times, even if you are making it fun, but overall, it's not horrible. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy taking orphan teams over. It's a challenge to me. How quickly can I get this team back up without screwing the whole future and things like that. So even if you're having a tough time, just stay at it, make it the best out of it, and just try to enjoy it. The first thing the first position I want to talk about today is the running back position. This seems to be everybody's favorite. It's always a controversial position in Dynasty, and I think it's even more so here on Dynasty Owner just because of the whole second contract situation. We're going to talk about that here in a second because the first thing I want to touch on running backs is kind of the longevity of them. You're really getting 3 to 4 years, 5 or 6 if you're really lucky, and then they start fading away. And that's been happening a lot in the past, 10 plus years, and it's just not a good trend. We haven't seen anybody start to reverse it lately. There's no more Adrian Petersons or Emmett Smiths left in the world, it seems like, and it's really taking a toll on fantasy. Every year you only get 10 or 12 workhorse running backs anymore instead of 20, 25. They were never all equal, but they still got you plenty of production and plenty of carries during the game and enough to be fantasy relevant. But now you just don't have that. You're starting to see this running back by committee approach, which is my second topic here I want to talk about on the running backs. The running back by committee approach really, really hurts fantasy. Like I said, with this 10 to 12 bell cow running backs now, when one of them goes out, gets injured, retires, whatever, it really, really hurts the running back position as a whole because now you're adding 2 more players, 3 more players in a committee to dilute it even more. It's just not what it once was. I'm hoping we'll get back to it. Some teams are starting to realize that, if you get a good running back and get them going, they can do some special things. A lot of running backs depend on the rhythm and the flow of the game and wearing people down before they start really, really producing. And they don't get that chance in a running back by committee. Sorry about that. Just look at Jonathan Taylor early in the year. He was splitting carries and it just felt like he could never get going. They gave him the ball 25 times the last couple times of the year or last couple games of the year. And the dude went off. It's just how the running back position works. But they're also taking a beating every play. Even on pass plays, they got a pass block. So contact finds that position. It's just not a long-term position anymore. Like I said, hopefully we see that trend change because I love the position for fantasy. It's great. And I would really, really hate to see something that gets down to where there's only 5 or 6 real true workhorse running backs in the league because it'll make fantasy pretty tough. So hopefully that trend reverses a little bit. The third thing I want to touch on here with them is target highly drafted running backs. And I don't mean by the other owners in your league. I mean by NFL teams. If you draft a highly targeted or a highly drafted running back, you're almost guaranteed 250 touches. In recent history, only Sony Michel and Clyde Edwards-Helaire have received less than 250 touches out of running backs that were drafted in the first round. And both of them had injuries in their rookie year. Sony Michel would have 100% passed 250 if he did not get hurt in his rookie year. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire would have been close. I don't think he'd have got there, but he was injured nonetheless. He did end up with 181 touches. So either way, if you draft a running back that was taken in the first round, you can count on 200 touches for the most part. Might not be the most productive touches, but you can count on touches. Teams aren't going to take a running back high and not use him. We've seen it over and over again. Target those running backs every time when you need them. It's like I said, target these highly drafted running backs because it's very, very highly unlikely to find the next James Robinson. How often do we see a James Robinson? Hardly ever. You can find that at other positions sometimes, but not running back. Running backs they don't grow on trees, especially in dynasty fantasy football. You need to target highly drafted running backs, find your running backs, but don't take them too early because if you do, by the time or don't take them too early in your rebuild because if you do, by the time your team's ready to win, then running backs are going to be fading out like we just talked about. I think that's all I want to talk about here on the running backs. Like I said, just try to take all that in a little bit. It's like I said, it's little tidbits of information that are all useful. Watch the longevity, watch the running back by committee. Both of those can really, really put a damper on things. Next position here is tight end. Excuse me. The tight end position, I've mentioned it a couple times before, but the main thing and the first thing I want to talk about with them is patience. If you're not patient with the tight end position, you're going to have to pay a premium for one. You're going to have to pay up for a Darren Waller, a Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, somebody like that if you aren't patient. If you're patient, you're going to find a tight end eventually. These guys take 3 to 5 years to develop no matter what. I don't think we've ever seen, I'm not too old, but in my recent memory, no tight end's been drafted and just came in and dominated. You don't see a rookie tight end with over 500 yards almost ever. You don't see them putting up wide receiver numbers or even rookie wide receiver. Excuse me. You don't see him putting up the same numbers as rookie wide receivers, nothing like that. Cole Kmet this year had 25 catches, 243 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he looks like the next big thing at tight end coming up here in a few years. And that's all it takes. If you just show some promise towards the end of the season in your rookie year, you got a bright future ahead of you because you're starting to pick it up quickly. And that's just how the position works. If you don't progress slowly, you're going to get sent to the back burner really quick. And it was really nice to see the progress that Cole Kmet made. I believe he's going to be a potential top 5 tight end here in a few, 3 to 4 years. It's going to be a little bit yet, but he'll get there. The next thing I want to talk about with him is if long-term patience is not an option and you don't want to blow your whole future on a tight end, obviously that's not very smart to do unless you're getting Travis Kelce. And you're ready to compete right now and just need a tight end, then you try to get Travis Kelce, but that's a story for another day. Like I said, if long-term patience isn't an option, you go out and target somebody in the third year, a Mike Gesicki, a Robert Tonyan, somebody like that, somebody that's not blown up yet, but they haven't looked horrible either. You're going to have to pay up for them, but you don't have to mortgage your whole future for them. So you can always go out and target those guys. Tonyan had 52 catches, 586 yards, and 11 touchdowns this year. The yardage wasn't there, but with 11 touchdowns, that more than makes up for it, and you were extremely happy with that at the tight end position, especially in 2020. It was a wasteland. Outside of Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, there was basically nobody. And it just wasn't a fun position to deal with unless you were one of those two, one of the owners that had those two players. The takeaway from the tight end that I got for you guys is if you don't want to be patient, you're going to have to mortgage your future unless you can find one of these middle-of-the-road tight ends, but sometimes that's hard to do. The next position we have is wide receiver. This is probably my favorite position to deal with in rebuilding because there's just so many options. You're getting 3 to 4 wide receivers per team each play. Almost all teams run 3 wide receiver sets now, and you're constantly seeing 4 and 5 wide receiver sets on the field anymore in this new wide open passing era of the NFL. And it really helps out in fantasy, for your wide receiver, because you're getting guys like Nelson Aguilar that nobody expected to do well this year, and he had a solid fantasy year, especially in Dynasty owner where you can play players on your bench. Those points help out a ton in close matchups. Imagine if you could draft DeAndre Hopkins, Devonta Adams, Julio Jones the first year they came into the league. Imagine how stress-free of a fantasy owner's life that would be, to just be able to plug one of those guys in and never think about it unless they got a bye or an injury. And that's what you can do with these highly drafted rookie receivers when they hit. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, you got these Nelson Aguilar. So you got all the way from DeAndre Hopkins to a Nelson Aguilar and everybody in between that's producing enough that they can almost win you a matchup each week. Not every week, but some weeks they're going to pop off and win you a matchup. And if you can plug and play and mix and match and find the right pieces, you can really, really get away without spending a whole lot at the wide receiver position in terms of draft capital and trade assets and things of that nature. You can find great wide receivers on free agency. Brandon Cooks, Marvin Jones, Robbie Anderson, Nelson Aguilar, as I mentioned before. All of those guys were widely available in Dynasty Owner last season at some point. I'm not saying the whole season. At some point in time, after the draft and once the leagues had got rolling, those guys were widely available. You could have had any one of them as long as you had the cap space, and there's probably always going to be those types of players out there. Each and every year, it almost never fails. So you can really find different ways to work around the wide receiver position, and that's what makes it a lot of fun. As I mentioned, that's kind of the ways to acquire them cheap, and there's nothing wrong with going that route, but I like to kind of go with my next topic that I want to talk about on the wide receivers, and that's finding your stud. Like I said, if you can get the Julio, Adams, Hopkins of the world, and you get one of those on your team, imagine how the Justin Jefferson owners feel. I was unfortunate and didn't draft him, but all I can do now is dream of what it would be like to have him on my roster, and just imagine what it would be like to have Justin Jefferson sitting on your team right now. As long as he continues the path he's going, you ain't ever got to take him out of your lineup unless he gets hurt or a bye week. Other than that, Justin Jefferson's in your lineup every single week, and you just worry about the other spots. And that's a great thing to have. That's kind of hard to find in any position aside from quarterback. Sometimes you'll get lucky and hit on your rookie quarterback, and then you'll have them forever. But they get huge deals. You might not be able to keep them. These wide receivers are generally affordable, and even on the bigger deals, you can still find a way to squeeze them in. But that's really the main position I see in Dynasty Owner that should be your foundation, is the wide receivers. Just find a way to get one of these or even 2 of these studs and just leave them in your lineup and go and figure the rest out from there. You can also, get one stud receiver and try the free agency route and the cheaper route and combine the two and find a happy median. That's probably what 90% of the people do. But, I'm really wanting to kind of try this, find 2 stud wide receivers and that are young, roughly the same age, and just leave them in my lineup forever. And then worry about the rest of it from there and see how it works out. It's an interesting concept on the wide receiver position and one I don't see done too often. I just think it would be interesting to try. I guess not the last position, but the last important position for all you kicker haters out there, is quarterback. This is the most important position in Dynasty Owner. And what I mean by most important is they make a lot of money. So they take up a lot of cap space. And when they take up a lot of cap space, they need to produce. If you have somebody you're paying $35 million a year and they don't produce, you lose. You'll never win that way. It just isn't possible. Do you think there was anybody that won a championship this year that had Dak Prescott on their roster at the end of the season? I'm willing to bet the answer to that question is there was zero. It's just too hard to overcome unless they somehow had Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And even then, Joe Burrow got hurt at the end of the year, so they had to find a free agent quarterback, and that's not happening unless you got $30 million in cap space. There's a couple different options and routes you can go at quarterback. Your quarterback I would target right after your tight end. So if you're rebuilding, tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, in that order. You can flip-flop the quarterback and the wide receiver if you're in love with a prospect or something that's not going to kill you. But I like to take the quarterback first because then you get a little bit of time to see him and feel him out and know if you need to take another one next year or not, Basically, quarterbacks are hit and miss. Even the NFL scouts that get paid to evaluate quarterbacks get them wrong all of the time. So I suggest you take a quarterback a little bit before that. But let's get into these options here. Basically, you can run with 2 vets on your team, and that's going to cost you a ton of money, probably roughly around $70 million in cap space, if not more. So it's not necessarily sustainable, and it's certainly not realistic. Honestly, you're just not going to be able to form enough of a team around 2 veteran quarterbacks on huge deals to stay competitive for more than 2 weeks. Not really, but I mean, I'm sure you could find a way to do it for a year, maybe 2, if you got really, really, really lucky. And I do not advise it because it's going to take a lot of luck. Maybe it's not luck, I don't know, but to me, it's going to take a lot of luck and a lot of hitting on some players that aren't supposed to produce like they're producing type stuff. If you want to be able to afford 2 veteran quarterbacks and compete consistently. The other option is you can get risky with it. Once your quarterback's ready for a second deal, trade them and never have a quarterback on the second deal, just to always have 2 rookies turning them out. With using draft capital and then trading them and getting more draft capital and just always keeping these 2 rookies on cheap deals. The problem with that is rookies struggle a lot. You're going to miss on draft picks, and then you're going to end up like me with a Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones combination that's going to get you nowhere. You're going to run into that probably more often than you don't. Eventually, if you want to start taking two quarterbacks every single year for the next 3 years, yeah, you're going to get a couple of them that hit, but in 4 or 5 years, you're going to have to trade them again and try it over. So I don't think that's a very realistic option. The only realistic option I can come up with at quarterback is just balance it out, get a veteran quarterback and a rookie quarterback. And then when your rookie quarterback's going up on his deal, it's time to either trade that vet or trade the rookie that's going into his second contract, depending on who you like more, and time to find another rookie. Because like I said, paying $70 million to a quarterback only leaves you with $50 million, 53 to be exact, for the rest of your roster. You got to fill out 24 more spots on $50 million. Good luck, because some of these NFL players aren't cheap. And if you want any type of talent, you're going to have some cap space. That's just all there is to it. Yeah, that's really the only things I got on quarterback. It's pretty much clear cut. It's the most important position. You need to draft them early if you have a high draft pick and you need a quarterback. You can't win if you don't have a productive quarterback. You just can't. They are the top scorers every single year in every single fantasy format. So, like I said, if you just have a quarterback getting you 15 points a week, and the other guy's got a 40-point a week quarterback or 30-point a week quarterback, you're in the hole every single week starting out, and that's no fun. You can also, or actually, worded that a little bit wrong. Let's talk about ways to acquire quarterbacks. As I mentioned, you can draft a quarterback with your draft capital. That is probably the easiest and safest way to get a quarterback, because if you try to trade for Justin Herbert right now or Joe Burrow, you might be able to get Burrow a little bit cheaper because he's hurt. But imagine what you're paying for a Herbert right now. It's going to be outrageous, and you're going to mortgage your entire future, and then you're not going to be able to build a team around Herbert, and then you're going to waste Herbert's rookie years, and it's not going to be fun. So don't do it. Basically, well, I don't want to tell you not to do things with your team, but that's just hard to do. But to trade all these assets for a Herbert right now and still try to win would be very tough. So like I said, you draft them and then look at your free agents. Or trade for a middle of the road quarterback. You can get them somewhat cheap and things like that. But look at your free agents. Last season, at some point in time, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, all of these guys were all widely available in leagues. You could have had any of them for a few dynasty dollars. So that's probably the cheapest route you can go to get quarterbacks, and the safest route aside from drafting it, because when you're drafting them, you're probably going to be picking high and you're more likely going to get a stud there than in free agency. But you can also get them very, very cheap in free agency and get your backup quarterback that way if you have to. I think that's all I got on quarterbacks. I'm sorry if I missed anything there. That's a very important position. If you don't feel like I touched on enough on any of these positions, please feel free to read the article. I go pretty in depth in that on them as well, and kind of break these topics down a little bit more. The last thing we got here is kickers and conclusions, as you see down in the corner. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about kickers. It really turns some people off. Some people don't mind them. I personally do not mind kickers. They're kind of fun. I like it with the clutch scoring. It gives a little different of an aspect to it. I like the way the scoring's handled here on Dynasty Owner with kickers. It really, really makes them pay for missed extra points and things like that. You see negatives from kickers every now and again, and that really makes a difference. It almost makes you wonder if you should play them or not. But then you see these 18, 20-point games they're putting up, and then you start your kickers. Basically, I have two things on a kicker. One from Steve Van Tassel: always keep 3. I've learned that just don't take a bye week, or don't take a 0 on your bye week because you don't have 3 kickers. They're all cheap, not all of them, but most of them are cheap. You can almost always find a cheap one. Just get 3 kickers. It's not hard. Get 3 and forget about it. And then the second thing I got on kickers is do not spend big. Why spend your money on a kicker that can get you -3 points when you can spend that money elsewhere and use it productively? So don't spend big on a kicker, unless it's Justin Tucker, I guess. That dude never misses. Must be the name. But don't spend big on kickers. Always have 3. And that's about it I got on kickers. That's all I got for you guys today. It's been fun. As I've said before, tell some friends about Dynasty Owner. Let's get some new faces in here. Help me teach some new people. Give me some new people to talk to. Give us some new people to draft with. Let's not keep this a secret. I think everybody that's been playing this for the most part's had a good time. So let's share it and enjoy it with others. That's all I got for you guys. Good luck on your 2021 chase for the ring. Enjoy the off season. March 18th is a big date. Have a good one, guys.